And I'd like to welcome Roy Brenninghouse, of course, on the Third Mutual Board. Good to see you, sir.
Good morning. Good to see you
Good.
again.
Did you have a good weekend?
Yes, very nice.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, so did I.
Hope you did.
I had a nice time with my wife and daughter for Mother's Day, so it was great. So we're going to talk about what's going on Third, and the first thing is there were a couple people that were appointed to the board because, as many of you folks know, we had a couple members leave. One went to GRF, and the other one left for some their own reasons.
Right.
And now you got two more.
Now we got
Filled
two
the
more.
slots.
Thank heavens.
Yes.
As you know, Ken, we do an awful lot of work.
Yeah.
And meetings. So it's great to have these two folks, back on or on the team. We did have an election on Tuesday, and the board chose Kush Bada for one of the vacancies. He will fill out a term of 1 year and 2 months.
Okay.
And we also elected Jack Connolly, and he will also fill out a 1 year and 2 months term. And then they'll have to go for election in front of the whole group, not just the board.
Now, what are some of the backgrounds on these two gentlemen? Were they on any advisory, any of the committees as an advisor?
Yes. Well, actually, they've shown interest, appeared at some of our meetings. They were not fully assigned as advisors, but that is a good way to get on the board. If you work with our committees as an advisor, you kind of get to know all the things that we get into, and it makes it easier for you when you get on the board. That's kind of the way I got involved in the board. But both these gentlemen have business backgrounds. They also have management experience, and they both have been on advisory boards, HOA boards. And we were impressed with their not only their backgrounds, but their view of what their role is on the board. As you know, boards don't get into the weeds, or they shouldn't get into the weeds of management. That's what staff is for.
Right.
Boards set policy, boards review and take care of strategy, long-term plans, short-term plans. That's what boards get into, and they give guidance to the staff. We do have occasionally folks want to roll up their sleeves and get into something that they're really interested in. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. So these two guys demonstrated that they understand the difference.
That's very good.
So we're excited.
That's good. And it's, to fulfill those vacancies fairly quickly is always good. So
Right. This didn't take very long.
There's not more on the board members that are still there.
Right, because we had to pick up the slack.
Well, I'm sure they'll be met on your next board meeting,
Yes,
which
they
will
will.
be coming up tomorrow.
That's right.
Okay, so people tune in and just for Third and meet the new board members.
Exactly.
All right, so you got a couple of things you want to get to?
Yes.
We're going to talk about some of the budget things.
Well, I did. I wanted to talk about the budget process because there's a lot of mythology about how we manage the residents' money. And we have a formal budget process. And the first thing that we did this year in Third, which I think is relatively new, is we had what we call pre-budget meetings for both the management, the Maintenance and Construction Committee and the Landscape Committee, because that's where all the money really goes, to those two areas. And what we tried to do was to come up with worked with staff, come up with an idea as to where our priorities are and where the money needs to be spent for next year. And those meetings are very productive. We will be taking our recommendations to the full board at the end of this month from both of those committees. And then when that is finished, the board will set the recommendations to, the board-approved recommendations to the CEO, Brad Hudson, and he will review it with his staff, and then he will bring that back to the full board, and the board will approve it.
Okay.
So the notion that staff just runs amok and spends money wherever they want to is not true. It's simply not true. And once the budget is set, and we start the new year in January, as you probably know, every one of the boards has a finance committee.
Right.
And what we do in those meetings is we go line by line, expenditures, revenues, every month. So if anything's out of whack or things aren't progressing, or we'll spot it and we'll correct it. So we have a very close rein on how those dollars, precious dollars, are spent. And we also, every year, we audit the entire, all the budgets and all the expenditures in the village. And that's done, by an outside professional group. I think Pete Marwick is our auditor. So, not much gets by.
Yeah.
Our CEO isn't hiding money to spend on things he wants to spend it on.
All right, yes.
So that's our process.
And of course, we're just about getting to that process. In some ways, has started.
It started.
So you wanted to talk about what you call kind of the heavy hitters, and in M&C and in landscape.
Yes.
And you picked those two committees. Those are heavy hitters for sure.
Well, that's where the bulk of the program money is allocated. And the important thing to understand is that some of these things are ongoing year after year.
Yes, they are.
We're trying to fix the infrastructure and trying to improve the infrastructure. And so maintenance and construction spends the bulk of their money on things like exterior paint, roofing replacement, dry rot repair. Those are the ones that are over $1 million, $1.5 million.
And of course, the dry rot is something that I know you folks from Third have talked about on and off. Mm-hmm. That it's now being part of the, I guess, it's the ongoing maintenance plan and exterior paint. And
right.
You get to that before you go in and paint. And in some cases, there's some things a little bit more serious, and somewhere else you might have to leapfrog up to that one and get that repaired quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these projects that we're working on, also exterior lighting, waistline remediation, very important, and building structure repair, all of those are over $500,000.
Yeah.
And the total for that particular group is around $7 million, $7.5 million.
Yeah.
But as you well know, we have 27 projects.
Right,
and so but these are the ones that take up the bulk of the effort and the money and staff time. And then when you look at the landscape budget, the heavy hitters are lawn maintenance, shrub maintenance, tree maintenance, and finally slope maintenance, which is like $335,000 per year, the slope maintenance. But what we're thinking about for 2019 is slope rejuvenation.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's very important, because the soil, when the soil gets bad, it doesn't matter what you plant, it's not going to grow. And so we also have to change the mix of what we have on the slopes.
Mm-hmm. Slopes have always been an issue.
Well,
for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons
slope.
In this part of the country.
Yeah.
Because you do get heavy rains, and you get drought, and then you get the landslides, and it got pretty nasty north of LA this year.
Yes, it did.
Fortunately, our slopes aren't quite that big because we're not next to the mountains.
Yeah.
But the other focus that we're going to have for next year is fire prevention, particularly on our western border.
Yeah.
There's a lot of brush out there, and unfortunately, we don't control or own a lot of the areas. As you know, it's a wilderness area. The city of Irvine and Laguna Beach own some of that land, so we have to kind of cooperate and work with them to mitigate the possibility of fire. And as we continue this drought, it becomes more and more and more important.
Yeah, in some of this, of course, you work with the Orange County Fire Authority, and they come in and they all pretty much mandate, you need to change this here.
That's right.
I'm talking about what's on Third's land, of course.
Yeah.
But it's like anything else, they come in and go, you know what, there's a reason we're telling you this has to be done.
Certain trees, certain bushes are very susceptible to, when fire hits them, they explode.
Yeah.
Like the eucalyptus tree.
Yeah.
Those things are filled with oil.
Yeah.
And when the fire hits them, they just boom, and then that's what spreads so quickly. So we have to be mindful of that and, concentrate on the difficult areas. And then finally, another focus that we're finally beginning to work on is to convert a lot of our landscape to what we call Mediterranean climate landscape, because that's what we have here is a Mediterranean climate. Now, you know, as our president said last week, you know, we're not going to plant olive trees everywhere, unfortunately, and grapevines and so forth.
Yes.
But we are going to, you know, try to find the right mix of trees and plants and work that into our approvals in terms of what we can plant and what we can't plant. And we'll also be converting some of the areas to this more tolerant landscape.
And that's something that's ongoing. It takes time, and
It takes a lot of time.
It's not inexpensive.
No, and that's exactly right. And it won't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So what we try to do is lay out a 5-year plan so that we can eventually get to where we want to get to.
Yeah.
And that's part of our strategic planning effort.
Yeah. Well, that's you know, it's good. And coming up, as I said, the budget process for 2019 is beginning, and it'll be ongoing until August or so.
Right.
So it takes some time.
Takes some time.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of staff work.
Yeah, and a lot of things to look into.
That's right. That's right.
Very good.
So good.
I'm glad you could come on today.
Well, I got one more thing to talk about.
All right.
If we got the time, Ken.
Oh, of course.
I want to talk about our energy infrastructure effort. And I think everybody saw in the blast, I guess it was last week, our Friday email to all of the residents, that Southern California Edison has announced a program to replace cables and transformers in and around the village. And they will give us, they're supposed to give us all, the residents, 72 hours notice by a variety of means. But it's terribly important for our residents who have medical equipment like oxygen and you know, requiring electric pumps and anything that they have that requires electricity, to understand when those outages are going to occur and take appropriate steps, either to go visit with relatives or to go to a clubhouse or whatever. Because these outages are planned in advance. They're not like the ones that happen periodically without a plan. But it's very important for these folks. The other thing that they can do, the residents can do, is register with Southern California Edison. They do have a program so that they will know that if they knock out power to this particular area where some of these residents who require, you know, electricity for their medical equipment, they can work around that, and they could give proper notice. You have to tell them how you want to be noticed, whether it's cell phone, regular phone, email, text, whatever. But they will put that in the file, in your file. So it's important for residents to call SCE. And the second thing we did, I think it was last week, was to approve a contract for an energy consultant. Now, this energy consultant is going to look at our entire electrical infrastructure and take a long look at it and give us some ideas about how we can improve it over time. This is not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but we are concerned about making sure that we can accommodate the increasing need for power. And if we start creating plug-ins for electric vehicles and so forth, you know, that's going to take more power, and everybody's using more power. Yeah. So, you know, can't have too much of it.
No, and so you know, it's an ongoing thing. The infrastructure over the next few years, electrical infrastructure, for many folks is going to be changing drastically.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's all I got.
All right.
You got any questions?
No, I think you covered everything. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it's been fun.
And folks, again, tomorrow at 9:30, of course, is the third meeting, and you're welcome to go down there or tune in. It's your choice.
In the boardroom.
In the boardroom.
In the boardroom.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Thank you.
We'll be right back.